Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to demonstrate how I make this little Tunisian Crochet Heart Applique that has surface crochet and scalloped edging. I'm using Hobby Lobby I Love This Cotton in the color turquoise and white, and the scallops are done in the color sunshiny. I'm using a yarn needle, a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook, which is also an H8, and a pair of scissors. Leaving an approximately 8-inch tail, start with a slip knot. Chain 7, keeping the chains somewhat loose because you'll be working into them later. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Next, we're going to pull up loops in all of the chains. The loop that's already on the hook counts as the first stitch. We're inserting in the back loop of the chains, not the back bump. In some patterns you want to work in these back bumps, but if we do that in this pattern, it's going to make a lumpy seam when we get to that portion. So insert the hook in the back loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, keep the loop on the hook, so you now have 2 loops. Do the same thing. In every chain until there are 7 loops on the hook. 2, 4, 6, 7. And for this pattern we need 1 more, and so this is somewhat unusual. I am going to pull up a loop in this back bump only of this last or first chain. So, and this one is a tad challenging. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and now we have 8 loops on the hook. The return pass on every row in this entire project decreases on the first stitch. In normal Tunisian crochet, you would yarn over, pull through 1 loop at the beginning of the return pass, but we are not doing that on any of the rows in this pattern. So what we will do instead is yarn over and pull through 2. And what we have created then is a vertical bar and a slanting bar next to it. Continue, yarn over, pull through 2, back to the other side or the other edge of the row. Counting stitches, I'm counting the vertical bars. This is the edge stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's the vertical bar and a slanting bar. Now the forward pass of the next row is where we start doing the modified Tunisian simple stitch. With regular simple stitch, we would simply insert under the vertical bar, yarn over, and pull up a loop. That is normal Tunisian simple stitch. However, In this pattern, we're using the modified Tunisian simple stitch. So insert under the vertical bar and the horizontal bar next to it. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Do the same thing for every stitch across. Vertical and horizontal, yarn over, pull up a loop. This other edge is different though, because there is no horizontal bar next to the vertical bar. Rather, there's a slanting bar. So we will insert under the vertical and the slanting. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Now we should have 7 loops on the hook because we've decreased. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Return pass. Yarn over, pull through 2 every single time, back to the other edge. Now let's count the vertical bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a slanting bar. And this is how I count the rows. I count the V's along the edge here. Here's 1 and 2. And the start of number 3 is on the hook. There we are at the edge, so under the vertical and the slanting. I now have 6 loops on the hook. 2, 4, 6. Vertical bars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a slanting bar. Rows 1, 2, and 3, and row 4 is on the hook. All right, I've worked a few more rows. Let's count rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is on the hook. And on this most recently worked row, I've got 1, 2 vertical bars and 1 slanting bar. So this next row is the last row of this part of the project, triangle 1. So we insert under the vertical and the slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop. We now have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. Should be 7 rows on the hook, 7 rows in the project. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're not going to do an 8th row in this section, but that loop that's on the hook is the first part of the next row, which is the first row of the next triangle. For triangle 2, we turn triangle 1 clockwise 90 degrees, and note that all of the bars that were vertical are now horizontal. And along this diagonal edge, there are slanting bars between all of the horizontal bars. So, the first row of triangle 2 also will consist of only 1 stitch. And what we need to do is insert the hook back into the same bar that the stitch is coming out of. So insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. So the configuration is we now have 1 row accomplished of triangle 2. Triangle 2 is an increasing triangle. Triangle 1 was a decreasing triangle. So for row 2 of triangle 2, we will insert in that horizontal bar, the next horizontal bar, yarn over, pull up a loop, and we will also insert into slanting bar, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, and yarn over, pull through 2, 2. So we now have 2 rows in triangle 2. And I like to put a stitch marker in the edge of row 1, which ends up being the bottom point of the heart. Okay, for row 3, let's count. We've got a vertical bar here, a vertical bar here, and a slanting bar here. So we insert under the vertical and the slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, then go over here to the corresponding horizontal bar, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, and in the corresponding slanting bar, yarn over and pull up a loop. So we now have 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 till we finish that row. Now let's count. First of all, we've got row 1, 2, 3, and row 4 is on the hook. In row 3, we've got 1, 2, 3 vertical bars and this slanting bar. So insert under the vertical and the horizontal next to it, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert under the vertical and the slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, go over here to triangle 1, insert under the corresponding horizontal bar, yarn over, pull up a loop, and in the slanting bar, yarn over, pull up a loop. We have 5 loops on the hook. One, 2, 3, 4 rows of triangle 2. I've worked a few more rows. Let's count the rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 7th row is on the hook. The 7th row is the last row of triangle 2. And the horizontal bar, and this row is different. I am not going to work into the slanting bar, but rather I'm working into the original slip knot, and this can be challenging, so I use a little needle to help me loosen things up and insert in that initial slip knot, yarn over and pull up a loop. I now have 8 loops on the hook, 2, 4, 6, 8, and to finish this row, it's a little bit different than some of the others. I am not going to yarn over this time, but rather I'm going to pull the 8th loop through the 7th loop. Then I will continue yarn over to pull through 2 loops at a time back to the other edge. All right, I have now completed a mitered square in modified Tunisian simple stitch. 7 rows and 7 stitches along each edge. All right, now we're going to work the 2 lobes of the heart. In order to pivot in the correct place along this edge, we're going to put a stitch marker in the 4th vertical bar. And you can count from either edge and get to the 4th one, because the 4th one is exactly the middle. So counting from this side, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put a stitch marker in that bar. And just to make sure, we count 1, 2, 3, 4 from the other edge. Then we pivot the square, and we'll do the same thing along this edge over here. We need a stitch marker in the 4th vertical bar. And this one is kind of hard to see the vertical bar in this corner here because of the way we configured it. So it's easier to start from the left, from this side over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put the stitch marker right there. And let's identify what's going on in this corner over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of hiding because of the way we did this, but that's kind of important. You'll see later. But make sure you identify that that is the vertical bar on this side of this edge. Okay. The first row of this portion of the heart shape, which is lobe 1, consists of 1 stitch. So we're going to insert under the vertical and the horizontal bar in the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, and this is a short row, so we're returning after just 1 stitch. And here's another place we need a stitch marker in this first row of lobe 1. Okay, the next row is also a short row, but this one consists of 2 stitches. So we are inserting our hook in the same place where we inserted it in the previous row, right there. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and in the vertical bar and horizontal bar next to it, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, and it's time to return. Yarn over, pull through 2 twice. So we now have 2 rows in lobe 1, 1, 2, and the 3rd row is on the hook. The 3rd row is a long row because we go all the way to the center of this edge. So we insert under the next vertical and slanting of the previous row and into the same stitch where we did the 2nd stitch of the previous row. 3 loops on the hook, and we have 1 more. We need to pull up 1 more loop, and we're not working in this vertical bar yet. Instead, we're working between these 2 vertical bars. So I'm inserting my hook right there. And I like to get it under 2 strands so it's better anchored. Yarn over, pull up a loop. I have 4 loops on the hook. Do my return pass. Okay, I now have 3 rows in lobe 1. 1, 2, 3. Short, short, long. And you can see 1, 2, 3 vertical bars and 1 slanting bar. Okay, the next row, we have completed now a pie-shaped wedge. A short row, and a long row. And we're going to repeat that same thing, almost. So the next row, 1 stitch only. The next row, 2 stitches. So under the same from the previous row and pull up a loop. So we have now 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we've got a short row, long row, short row, and the next one is a long row. So we insert under the next vertical bar here and the slanting bar next to it, and this vertical bar here and the slanting bar next to it, and then this time we are working under the marked stitch or the vertical bar of triangle 2 and under the horizontal bar next to it. Yarn over, pull through 2, back to the edge. So we now have 2 pie-shaped wedges. Row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we now have 2 pie-shaped wedges. All right, the next row is a short row. So insert under the vertical and the slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both. This is another short row. It will consist of 2 stitches, so insert under the same vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, and insert under the next vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, and we have 1 more long row. Insert under the vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert under the next vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, and this time we're working between the marked vertical bar and the one next to it. So insert under 2 strands, yarn over, pull up a loop, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over 2, yarn over 2, yarn over 2, and that makes our 3rd pie-shaped wedge. Counting the rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We need another 2 rows, a short 1-stitch row and a 2-stitch row. So vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and insert under the vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, and the next vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through twice, and we now should have 11 rows in lobe 1. Counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And next we join with a slip stitch in the original slip knot of row 1, triangle 1. So that is behind all these strands and right in there. So you can see we still have a gap that will be seamed later, but we now have lobe 1, which is now joined in the center top of the heart with this slip stitch that we just made. And now we're getting ready to start lobe 2. And the first thing we need to do is join with a slip stitch, or not join with, but make a slip stitch that is like a modified Tunisian simple stitch. So we need to locate this vertical bar here, which, as we said before, was kind of hidden, and that's okay. Just make sure that you count 1, 2, 3, 4 over here to find this vertical bar from the first row of triangle 1. Insert under that, and then insert under the horizontal bar next to it. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull that loop through the one that was already on the hook. So we now have 2 slip stitches, this one and this one, between the 2 lobes. So we still need to accomplish row 1 of triangle 1 of lobe 2. So that consists of 1 stitch. So we're inserting under the next vertical bar and under the horizontal bar next to it. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and that is the first stitch of row 1 of lobe 2, and let's put a stitch marker in that. The next row is another short row. It will consist of 2 stitches. Insert under the same vertical and horizontal as the previous row, yarn over, pull up a loop, and in the next vertical bar and horizontal bar next to it, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 twice. So in lobe 2 we now have row 1 and row 2, which are short rows, and the loop for the next row is on the hook. Insert under the next vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert into the next vertical and horizontal, which are the same as the previous row, the same ones that we used on the previous row, yarn over, pull up a loop, and we're working our long row between these 2 vertical bars under 2 strands, yarn over, pull up a loop, return pass, okay. So in lobe 2 we now have our first pie-shaped wedge, short row, long row. So the next row is 1 stitch only. Insert under the vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. The next row is 2 stitches, so insert under the same vertical and slanting as before, and in the next vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop. So we now have 3 loops on the hook, and then the return is yarn over, pull through 2 twice. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and the next row is a long row. So insert under the vertical and slanting, and under the vertical and slanting, and this time we're working under the marked stitch, so insert under the vertical and the horizontal next to it. 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. So we now have 2 pie-shaped wedges, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We need another pie-shaped wedge. First row is 1 stitch only. Insert under the vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. Next row is a short row with 2 stitches only. Insert under the vertical and slanting, and under the next vertical and slanting. 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 twice, and the next row is a long row. Vertical slanting, and this time we're working between the marked stitch and the next vertical bar next to it under 2 strands, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, return. We now have 3 pie-shaped wedges. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We need one more pie-shaped wedge, but this one only has 2 rows. So yarn over, or insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through both for 1 stitch. And one more row, insert under the vertical and slanting, and under the vertical and slanting, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 twice, and you have now completed the second lobe. Let's count to make sure we have 11 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And this is where we do a needle join or an invisible join. I'm cutting the yarn to a length of about 8 inches, pulling it out of the last stitch, taking the yarn tail and threading it into the yarn needle. And I am going to work my needle join in this edge stitch of row 1, triangle 1, under both strands of the V. Insert the needle front to back, pull the yarn through, and then insert into the last stitch or edge stitch of lobe 2, front to back under just the back loop only, and pull on the tail. And now we have a joining stitch, this V right here, but we can't leave it loose like normally when we do a needle join. In this case, if we do that, it'll add an extra stitch on the stitch count around the edge. So instead, what we're going to do is pull on the yarn tail until the joining strand completely disappears. So here is the last stitch of lobe 2, and here is the first stitch of triangle 1, and they have now joined so that this joining strand is completely invisible.